Hi, and welcome to the BSSS e-content. My name is Piyush Pradhan, and I'm from the Department of English. I'm here for my audience with the topic listening skills. Now, most of my audience must be thinking, why do I feel a perennial need to actually come up with this listening skill recording today? Listening or hearing is something which we have been accustomed to or is abreast of since our childhood, and we have been listening to billions and billions of words till the time we die. So why do we need any specification? Well, I believe that regular listening skills, it's not just a simple listening skill. Rather, we need to understand its various stages and phases of it. So let's just begin. In order to learn the chapter outline, we're going to look at these different features of listening skill. First is, what is listening? We will be understanding it in a form of a short definition. Indeed, its process, plus its basic types. We have got the division in the listening skills, the kind of scenarios under which different situations and events are taken up by a human being. Then we'll be also concentrating on various forms of barriers to effective listening. And of course, how a listening is done effectively with its benefits attached. Now, in this part of the slide, we are going to look at why listening is so important in our day-to-day life and how is it so workable at a workplace. Now, I want my audience to look at the image down in this particular slide where I have taken 5 different divisions of the stages. Over here, in the first stage, we take the stage of receiving. That is the receptivity of the words from a stranger that goes directly inside our ears to get it processed further in our brain. Second is, of course, understanding or comprehending the word listened by any stranger. Third, remembering. Are you able to hear something or listen something? Now the difference is, in hearing, we try to avoid. We listen to one word with a single ear and then we just let it go from another ear. This is something which most of us do in our day-to-day routine lives. But how many of us actually bring that stage of evaluation? Evaluation means the analysis of the words which our ear hears and what our brain actually balances before it reaches to the tip of our tongue. And lastly, of course, the feedback, whether it is a positive feedback or a negative feedback of what you have just listened. So, therefore, we have to see that whatever we hear should always be right and not wrong. We cannot make any falsified assumptions whenever we read, talk and listen very carefully. On the other hand, when we compare active listening with passive listening, we find that the communication skill should be done at its full scale. There should not be any distortion or any kind of disturbance in between. It depends upon person to person based on his humor that at which situation and at what time that person actually wants to accept the subtleties of the atmosphere, the words which the stranger is trying to tell him, or that person is trying to react back with its full body language. So there is a differentiation in that comparison of the listening skill. Now in slide number 4, we are looking chiefly at 7 types of listening skills. The information listening, as the term itself says that it is teeming with information. Then comes the discriminative listening, the biased kind of listening in which the human ear try to make some kind of a partiality of the words. Then comes where love, peace, comfort and solace is involved. That is included in sympathetic listening, when you make someone to sit on the chair and make him to listen sympathetically. Then comes comprehensive listening. Comprehensive listening is absolute brief detailing of the words which your ear listen to what the stranger is saying. Then comes therapeutic listening, which is also called as empathetic listening. In this kind of listening, we have to see that someone who is talking to us, giving us advice, trying to suggest something, is trying to do a kind of a therapy because you are troubled inside and you're asking for someone's help and support. So someone has to have the patience and perseverance to make you to sit quietly and then give you the therapy based on very selected use of the words. And lastly, of course, for the critical listening, we take this kind of listening skill which is mainly used at the workplace, in companies or organizations. Let's push along to another slide now. Now we are going to detail whatever we have learned chiefly through those 7 different types of listening. First is informational. If I have to cite you some sample examples of informational listening, we have to look at this kind of listening, which can be work-based. Second, self-paced learning at home, where you can be tutored by your parents, by any special teacher, as a home tutor, etc. Or you'll be exposed to different kind of techniques used through training process by your superiors at your workplace. Then, of course, listening to an educational ebook in a form of an ebook acquiescence. Electronic books is something which you want to listen to for many hours when you put on your headphones and earbuds, and then you have to minutely understand and listen each word which is precisely said, and peculiarly working for your benefit and for your help. And lastly, when the listening is actually done through a kind of a tutoring done, and that is done very heartily, when someone wants to engage you and want to show his heart-to-heart connection. So there's a kind of a deep bond, and that person wants to expose you to all the words, the phrases and the statements that that person wants to explain you. In discriminative listening, we find that this is a first listening type or stage. It is something which we all are born with. We are innately having this listening skill type in us because we see that instead of relying on the words, we are just focusing on the tone of the voice. That listening skill that can be done with the help of a verbal cue, perhaps, or the changes in the sound. I can cite that example with the help of someone who's speaking to you in a very happy tone, and you are amused by listening to that person very keenly. The reaction of yours to listen to that person will of course be the smile you'll be wearing in your face, and you'll be laughing back. So, in this kind of listening, whatever conversation is going on, especially if it is a foreign language used, you automatically process in your brain the set of words and the kind of syntaxing of the language which was used by that stranger while explaining you something. In this part of the slide, we're going to look at the listening which is done in the form of a partiality. As my audience are looking down below to this picture, look at this guy in the grey suit or in an office attire. He wants to have some advice, and he wants to have 2 subordinates of his office. On the left-hand side, with the man in the white shirt and the blue tie, that person wants to explain the gravity of what is right and wrong and how this person should follow him or take his life step in a very careful mood and way. But at the same time, when we look at this guy in the red shirt, which is looking like a devil, that person is always going to fill trash in this person's brain. So this middle guy is always confused. Whom exactly am I supposed to follow? What on earth am I supposed to do now? Should I follow this person in the white shirt? Or do you think it should be the red person in the red shirt? No, I believe it should certainly be this guy in the blue shirt and tie. It's because he knows how to convince you and conveniently make you to sit and listen to him very carefully. This is also called as the human listening biased trap. Now we have reached to the stage where we're going to learn and focus on the sympathetic use of listening. Sympathetic listening, as you can see from both the pictures, is automatically driven by involving lots of emotions. Instead of focusing on the message spoken through words, the duty of the listener is to focus on the feelings and emotions of the speaker, just as this father trying to sympathetically try to speak something to the child, and the child is automatically following the father, followed by the guy in this picture where the lady wants to rub his shoulder because he is completely depressed and he wants to have a piece of advice. So how can this body language, this immediate touch, this cuddle may actually make someone to feel relaxed and comfortable with the person? Now we are looking at the comprehensive listening. Comprehensive listening is unlike discriminative listening. In this kind of listening, we require extreme language skills, but that should be done with patience and perseverance. This type of listening is usually developed in early childhood. Perhaps the detailing of each word is carefully chosen by the speaker to let others realize the pros and the cons of what needs to be explained to you. Then only the person can reach to its final decision. I hope my audience have understood this comprehensive listening type of skill. In empathetic or therapeutic kind of listening, we see that there are different people with different perspectives. In this, we actually work on the point of view of how a person has spoken something. Like in this picture down below, we are looking at a couple who has had some problem with their child. They have decided to visit a clinic of a child specialist. In this picture, we see that when this child is so much disturbed and does not listen to her parents, it's a duty of this child specialist to make this child understand things through exposure to the toys, making some funny faces, trying to recite some poems, etc. So what that child is trying to do is that the child is not trying to perceive every information what the child is hearing through her ears. Rather, by the hand gestures and smiling faces, that child wants to have an empathetic approach in order to understand how things work out. And so lastly, that doctor in that picture as a child specialist is finally, after some time, able to convince the child. So that was a very acute form of listening skill being made practice to a child, but it's a kind of an automatic therapy being given to the child. I hope my audience have understood what therapeutic kind of listening skill is all about. Now we are reaching to the final stages of our chapter outlining, where we are going to take up in this slide the use of critical listening. Now, in this picture in the right, you're looking at this lady who may be a director or who is at a very high position in the office. Now, these kind of individuals, whenever they have to interact or listen to their juniors, they have to analyze the complex information that exists, because that should be for the betterment of her office and the way how her office or organization should work. If she's going to miss the key factors, then it is going to be too much devastating for this woman. Why? Because when the information is shared, she's taking up that information, or the receptivity of the words is in a form of a face value. And in this critical listening, this woman is going to evaluate whatever is being said by all the individuals available in the room. Critical listening involves lots of crucial aspects, because that talks about the problem-solving kind of scenario at the workplaces. Now for my audience, I've come up with some few tips to improve our listening skills. Please look at the picture and work on these 10 tips, which are enormously important. Both the rows are talking about different kind of the usage of these listening skills. Now, $1 million question: why listening matters? What it is that is required to understand its effectuality in day-to-day conversation? I've got some example where I'm going to talk about some study being done on some handful of managers and employees, and they all belong to a large hospital system. Now, when we use the term hospital, of course, everyone has to understand that the things are explained. So around 40% of the variances is actually being done when it comes to hospital system and how things are witnessed positively by personnel. Let us just say the nurse, the doctors, the compounders, the surgeons, the other kind of support staff, etc. We find that listening matters when we listen to our subordinate very keenly. When there is a keen focus, then only you will be able to respect other person's feeling. Otherwise, you are going to just listen to some words abruptly and let it go, as if you might say, I do not care what exactly you're trying to tell me. Why on earth should I be just focusing on your part of the world when it doesn't help me at all? That is why we have to understand that our listening tendency actually was based on the specific frequency to which we were trying to listen to. Either it's going to give us the laurels in our life, or it can turn into an interpersonal conflict. So there's always a likelihood of a win-win situation, but sometimes things can also go astray and become disastrous. So I would like to explain this with the help of these two pictures down below, as this person, as a workplace employee, is actually being treated as someone who needs to be continuously ticking like a clock. You see, it is this hand of his superior with the key that he wants his junior to work 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Why would he be doing that? Because sometimes there can be a selfish motive from an organization to make its employee to keep working and listening positively, so that there can be a healthy environment, an ambience where everyone can flourish. So there are different techniques which sometimes people do adopt to consider it to be its superb activity, and that can trigger something very positive among human beings. For example, it could be the additional responsibility being given, it could be the public praise, very selected words being used for praising you within the public, and of course, the autonomy power. If you are a kind of guy who believes in autonomous power, You have to listen to everyone that you come across with. Never forget that. Then what effective listening truly is, we are going to look at this part in this slide. In effective listening, we actively absorb the information which is given to us by a speaker. Then we listen to it and further show our interest, whether we like it or we dislike it. Delivering verbal communication is like writing a newsletter involving the right choice of the words and even sometimes the non-verbal cues so that the message can be conveyed in a very fruitful manner. So effective learners show speakers that they have been heard and of course understood. In this part of the slide, we're going to look at this very essential question. Why do the most skilled communicators respond when listening? There are two different aspects: coaching versus counseling. And under it, we have different features. The first feature is reflecting. Reflecting to someone's words is like paraphrasing the words back to the speaker, what you have heard. One of the things we find in this reflecting aspect is that during a conversation, there's always a kind of a meaning which is ascribed to what we have heard and what we have actually missed. So the speaker has a clear intention to convey its message, but it's up to you how you reflect the moment when your ears listen to it. In this part of the second slide, we're looking at the point of probing. After reflecting comes the probing. Probing, in addition to reflecting, is what the most skilled communicators respond to. In probing, we find one who wants to go for the counseling kind of situations, and in such kind of counseling, a lot of probing is involved. Example, how could you have thought about it? Etc. In the last slide, we're looking at the last feature, which is called the deflecting. Now, deflecting responses shifts the discussion to another topic. When we deflect from what we have been told rather than acknowledging it, we can unintentionally communicate that we haven't listened and that we aren't interested. So deflecting shows that we are preoccupied with another topic. Especially if I have to cite you an example, I can cite you an example of mentoring, which is done by a mentor as a teacher towards its mentee as a student of the school or college. I know certain people are oversensitive, and in their cases, this portion or part of deflecting acts like wonders. But we need to have the correct full use of these skills, which will help us to understand the purity of the listening skills. Thank you so much, each one of you. I hope you have enjoyed this topic. And next time I'm going to come up with barriers to listening skills. Thank you so much, everyone. Goodbye and Godspeed.